Let's go green. Sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Good evening and welcome to Let's Go Green with Zoe Ryan filling in for Aisling O'Rourke. On tonight's show we'll be exploring if timber could be the answer to Ireland's construction crisis, why people in the Midlands are being encouraged to construct ponds on their land, edible flowers and an incentive to engage in more sustainable camping practices this summer. Later on I'll be talking to Laura Mason from Decathlon about the retailer bringing their No Tent Left Behind campaign to Ireland. Emma Noonan of Mullingar Gathers will be filling us in on how and why we should be incorporating flowers into our food. And this summer, the Biodiversity Officer at Laois County Council, Lisa Doyle, explains the reason behind their latest appeal to landowners under the Refarm Laois initiative. But first, over the years, concrete and steel have become the top building materials of choice, but timber is slowly coming back onto the scene due to it being a more sustainable and renewable material, which means that using it lowers our carbon footprint and positively affects the national sustainability goals. Now, to encourage this shift, Forest Industries Ireland have developed the Future Timber Design Awards, a new student-focused initiative in which third-level students studying relevant courses were tasked to come up with initiative ways to incorporate timber into structural and design choices. And Una Duffy, who is from Lee, just outside Portarlington, was one of the students whose project was recognised with an award. She, along with Mark Macaulay, Director of Forest Industries Ireland, are joining me now to discuss the competition. You are both very welcome onto the show.
Good. Thanks. Hi Zoe, thanks for having us on.
Una, I'm going to come to you first. Why was it that you decided to put a submission forward for the awards?
We were doing an assignment anyways based on them. Kind of around the same principles. So our lecturers told us about it and said, look, why not go for it? We're not a big course anyways, so I said it was kind of a bit of a thing of we're like, oh well, one of us will get something.
Right, okay, so you're like, may as well put something in and see what happens. It. And this might be perhaps a suiting time to bring Mark into the conversation and ask, why was it the Forest Industries Ireland wanted to run a contest of this nature?
Hi Zoe, yeah, I think as you pointed out in your introduction, Ireland has been principally a masonry driven construction country. You know, there isn't a tremendous tradition of building with timber in Ireland, unlike in most European countries or indeed in North America, where the vast majority of housing is built with timber. So we're trying to promote that idea with people, you know, building more with timber, using our homegrown natural resource. We have 800,000 hectares of forests in Ireland, and we want to use that to build more homes here. And the next generation of people who are going to be designing those homes, manufacturing those homes, engineering those homes, are who we're trying to speak to through this Timber Design Awards.
And Mark, an emphasis was placed on using homegrown timber. Why was that?
Well, as I say, we have a very significant forest resource here. We planted an awful lot of trees in Ireland back in the 1980s, 1990s, and those forests are now mature. So we have a very significant timber harvest coming up over the next 10 years where the supply of timber is going to significantly increase. At the moment, in fact, we import quite a lot of timber from the Baltic states and Scandinavia and places like that for our timber frame houses. And we'd like to see that transition more to homegrown timber. There's significant, environmental benefits to doing that. Our homegrown timber can do the same job as the timber grown overseas, and we have a lot of it coming our way. At the moment, we have about a quarter market share. So about a quarter of the homes built in Ireland these days are built with timber. But most of those would be what we would call scheme houses, so new residential estates. About half of those houses are built with timber frame. We'd like to see that increase and like to see the numbers go up overall. And there's new technologies coming through as well, glue-laminated timber and cross-laminated timber, where you can build much bigger structures with timber. And that enables things like community centres and libraries and schools and university buildings and all the civic offices. All these sorts of things can be built with timber now. And obviously the big gain in environmental terms is the savings in CO2 emissions, because obviously trees, as they're growing, They absorb the carbon dioxide out of the air, and a tree effectively is made from air. That's where it gets its mass from. The carbon in a tree has actually come from the air. It hasn't come from the soil. It hasn't come from water. It's come from the air. So we've taken that carbon dioxide out, and we've stored it in the timber. And if we can put it into these long-life building projects, then we've locked away that carbon dioxide for many, many decades. I'm in my house here. It was built in 1962. All that timber in this house, in the roof and the floor and the walls and the ceilings, is still here, and all the carbon in that timber, more importantly, is still here. So it's pretty easy to understand how having large-scale forestry and lots of building with timber really benefits climate change.
And speaking of homegrown timber, there was a number of different categories, if you will, for the awards. And the one for best use of homegrown timber, that's the one, Una, that you actually created a piece for, along with fellow student Cale Chandlers. And you won that. So tell me a little bit about the design.
So when we planned our design, Cale actually came up with a lot of it. He put together a model of the design and everything, and he really likes the idea of using the standardised timber sizes that already exist to really streamline production, and as well to use all of the plank. Like, obviously it's great to use timber, but if you're using a plank and then cutting half of it off to make some design, you lose a lot of the benefit, because that cut off more than likely just gets thrown away anyways. It still gets burnt or it gets left to rot. And he really focused in on that, and the idea of making it modular as well, so that it could be swapped out, and say maybe one of the larger sectional sizes could be cut down to be used for one of the smaller pieces afterwards. And this idea of not making something that just stands up there 50 years and then is all torn down, but stands up 50 years, needs to repair 30 years in, and is able to be repaired instead.
And it was a bus shelter. That was the design.
Yeah. So the idea was to make a bus shelter, and kind of to be able to adapt it to any sort of space. So like our design was in, say, 3 sections. And if you wanted, you could just do 2 sections and put in a smaller space, or make it larger again for a bigger commuter zone.
Tailor it basically to the space.
Yeah, that's it. And, instead of putting all the time and effort into designing multiple designs, one that can be adapted.
And Mark, that seems like a really practical idea. Like, what was the kind of hoped outcome out of doing this competition? Was it with the view to saying, OK, let's get some really good designs, and if there are ones that we think could be actioned upon, that it's something that we will do? Or was it merely just to say, let's get proof of concept, challenge the students to create these pieces and prove that timber can be used more widely? Or do you actually plan on creating any of the winning pieces?
I think it's a bit of both. So we were very impressed with all the entries that came in and all the winners, and there was a huge element of practicality to a lot of them. So absolutely, some of these projects could be designed, and we might look at doing that in the future. But principally, I think what we're trying to do here is to get our student engineers and architects and people in our universities to be thinking about timber as a material. Traditionally in Irish architecture, a lot of steel, a lot of cement, a lot of concrete is used, and that does give you tremendous kind of design benefits. But we want to give the students an idea of, well, listen, okay, I understand those technologies, I understand those methods. Now let me have a look at timber, because timber has its own benefits. We have a lot of timber here, as I say. It has its environmental credentials, which are very, very positive. But you have to, start people on that path early on, I think, and get them thinking about designing with timber, because it's a different approach. Obviously, the strength characteristics are different, the building, the detailing, everything to do with it is a different approach altogether. But it's incredible what you can build with timber. I was only recently in Norway, and we were taken to see one of the world's tallest timber buildings, and this is a 19-storey principally apartment building outside of Oslo, built entirely with timber. And it's absolutely astonishing to see this structure, which is probably certainly taller than any apartment building in Ireland, but it's entirely made with timber. And I couldn't quote you the numbers off the top of my head, but there are hundreds of thousands of tons of carbon stored in that building. And that building will still be standing, hopefully in 50 years' time, 70 years' time, whatever it might be, and providing those great benefits to the environment. But it's incredible what you can do with the new technologies in terms of gluing pieces of timber together and making big, strong structural beams, which then you can almost kind of build like steel. You can build these very tall, very strong buildings with these mass timber concepts. And that's something we'd like to see happening in Ireland. We're not really doing much of that yet. There are some challenges in our building regulations which limit the height which timber buildings can be to about 10 metres. And we need to get past that, and we need to say, OK, if we're going to address the emissions from our built environment, which are about 17% of Ireland's total greenhouse gas emissions come from construction. So it's a huge figure. If we're going to address that, then a clear way to do it is to decarbonise our building material and move away from materials which produce huge amounts of carbon dioxide in production towards a material that does the opposite. It takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
Yes, and Una, the course that you're doing, what was it that drew you to that? Because I must say, I wasn't aware that we actually offered a course of that nature. So what about it was it that you said, yeah, that's something I'd like to do?
Yeah, it's definitely an unusual one. I don't think I've met anyone who's gone, I know what that is. But I did construction in secondary school and I really enjoyed it. And we do a certain amount about NZEB in that, near zero energy buildings. I think now we're aiming for the zero energy buildings. But I was really interested in that way, and I actually looked at the course that predated this one, and they were obviously closing, and it was rerouting to this, and it just kind of had everything I wanted. It had a bit of practical, it had obviously a strong focus on sustainability, and then had a lot about timber, which I always wanted to learn more about, and you only really get to do a small amount in secondary school on it. Of course, so this was just a great opportunity.
Yeah. And Mark, I assume it's great to hear that next generation of, architects and other different kind of students that are in that area. It's great to see that they have that interest. And as you said in the wake of this competition, that it's great to see the potential that timber has with this next generation leading the force. But this was your first time running the event. Do you think that from the pilot run, were there any learnings from it? Are there any aspects that you'd look to change were you to do it again going forward?
I think the main thing we're going to do next time round is to promote it across a large number of universities. This time round, we piloted it in University of Galway and TU Dublin, and we're really pleased with the number of entries we got there. But I think we'll try to expand it out. I mean, you're right. The younger generation really has an interest in this, being very attuned to the environment and the challenges of climate change. They're very, very interested in how we can build greener. And, we're constantly being approached by young architecture firms who want to understand more about building with timber. And we've a lot of online resources where you can gen up on all the technical details of how you specify timber, how you work with it, what the various strength grades are, all these sorts of things that architects and engineers need to know if they're going to go ahead and plan a project with timber. And the other piece that's come along now is people have got very interested in what we call the embodied carbon in buildings, because we've made huge gains in terms of the energy efficiency of buildings, and that's been the big conversation probably for the last 15 years. How do we insulate our buildings? How do we put renewable energy platforms on them? And we've made huge progress in terms of our new buildings, both housing and other buildings, in terms of making them much more energy efficient whilst they're in use. So now the attention has switched a little bit to, okay, well, we've got to grips with that and we're making good strides there, but we still got this problem of, well, we're using or we're emitting a huge amount of carbon dioxide in building the buildings in the first instance, which is this embodied carbon. And we find the younger generation of architects and engineers are really interested in that and are looking towards timber as the solution to that.
So the future is looking bright for, as you say, making that more sustainable change when it comes to your building materials.
I think it is. I think, there's a clear issue there with some of the ways we do things in construction. And I think it points towards, a clear pathway that there is an option here. And if we can boost those numbers in terms of our houses being built with timber frame, if we can bring in some of these mass timber projects into Ireland, where we're building our schools and our community centres and things like that out of large scale timber beams, I think we're on the right path when we're looking at that.
Una, Mark, thank you both for taking the time to speak to me on this evening.
Thanks,
Zoe.
And if you are interested in finding out more about the Future Timber Design Awards initiative or pursuing the list of the other projects at Place, you can find out all those details on Forest Industry Ireland's IBEC affiliated website. After the break, we'll be finding out the benefits of having a pond on your land.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
It's Zoe Ryan bringing you Let's Go Green until 8 p.m. this evening. Now, have you ever contemplated getting or perhaps reinstating a former pond on your land? If so, Laois County Council may be offering you the perfect excuse to do that. They recently initiated a call-out to landowners for expressions of interest in receiving funding under the Reform Laois 2026 scheme to carry out such work. Here to tell us all about the initiative is a lady who is no stranger to this show. It is Biodiversity Officer at Laois County Council, Lisa Doyle. Lisa, thank you for joining me on the show this evening.
Thanks, Zoe. Delighted to be here.
Lisa, could you tell us a little bit about this new incentive, this new project that Laois County Council are just after launching, and you're specifically appealing to farmers more so than anyone else?
Yes, we have established a collaboration with Reform. They're part of the Burren Bio Trust that you may know of, originating in Clare. And the initiative is where we would install 10 ponds across the Laois landscape, ideally in areas that need a boost for biodiversity. The ponds will be installed this summer, and payments will be paid to the landowners via a biodiversity scorecard for the following 3 years.
And why wildlife ponds? What is the significance of them when it comes to the environment? Why is it that you're deciding to do this initiative now?
Yeah, good question. Well, if you're creating a biodiversity habitat, ponds get you the biggest bang for your buck with regards biodiversity establishment. You have like the mud layer, you have the area around the pond, you have wildlife in the pond, and then you have everything that, feeds from there. So you'll get frogs and newts and insects, and also, you'll get your migrating birds come through. The bats will eat the midges. You'll have mammals foraging and drinking. And it's also, there can be refuges in an intensively farmed landscape, a hop for birds going, via hedgerows. And they're just one of those things that, we're investing where we can. But the ponds come top of the list often with regards, that bang for your buck.
And as you said there, it's mainly farmers that you're appealing to because it is under the Reform Laois 2026 initiative. But there's two kind of sides to this in the sense of you're saying, okay, you can get funding to create a new pond, or if you have a ghost pond on your land, you're also providing funding for those to nearly be revamped and brought back to life.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about that actually. So ghost ponds, it's a slight copy of what Fingal did a number of years ago. They looked at the first OSI maps, and we had lots of ponds naturally occurring in the landscape. But through intensive agriculture intensification, these got filled in. And if you had a space for, where a pond was there, 50, 60 years ago or whatever it may be, there'd be a greater chance that the water table in that area would be high. Okay. So that's why ghost ponds are appealing, because you already know what the groundwater is like. Because I'm quite keen, if we're putting in ponds, that they're going to have water for nearly all the year round. We're not putting in liners because they're not biodiversity friendly. So we want a natural kind of attenuation of water between surface water and groundwater. So that's where the ghost ponds come in, and people can look them up on the OSI historic viewer for their farms.
Yes, that's right. You're saying that if people maybe are unaware that maybe previously that there could have been a pond on the land, that's where they can go to check out if there once was one there.
Yeah, That's right.
So you've mentioned there that they're beneficial in the sense that they're obviously creating habitats for a number of different creatures, but they also have their benefits as well when it comes to, you mentioned there about the water might naturally be there, when it comes to water flow management and also flood mitigation.
Oh, absolutely. They're one of the best ways to slow the flow. Rather than having water run off a landscape straight into a river or straight into a drain, a pond will hold it and allow a slow release into the greater landscape over time. They're one of the mitigation measures that can be found. It may be where the beavers in the UK, they're busy damming up the place, and places are being able to hold water, whereas before they just run off the landscape. So they're great in that regard, and will also accept in areas that might be naturally wet and could have drains around it. And we're just trying to bring, I suppose, what was there back, whether it's through a ghost pond or maybe having another look at those drains and going, are they necessary? Would it be better to have a pond in that area? If you bring bats into an area when you have your midges, they're actually great for aphids and carriers of vectors and diseases. Okay. So there are positive food web knock-on effect for landowners. And you obviously get, your pollinators if you're growing your potatoes and, you need a reservoir of local pollinators, bees and whatnot. You're drawing them into your landscape.
And can I confirm with you, is it specifically or is it exclusively more so for farmers? Because I saw a number of different communications around this incentive, and one of the headlines was landowners. So not necessarily farmers, but could you confirm for us, is it farmers specifically, or if you own a big mass of land, could it be a potential thing for you to apply to this as well?
Well, ideally, whichever piece of landscape needs a pond. So if you're in what I would consider a high biodiversity area versus someone who may have an intensive farm but wants to turn their hand to nature, I'd go with the low biodiversity score in that landscape, because you're bringing nature to somewhere that's maybe a little bit deprived. And also, hopefully, we'll be bringing that landowner with us on that journey of learning about biodiversity. This project's not here's your pond and off you go and you get your payments. It's an educational and awareness, and hoping that will bring back those cultural values and that pride and that knowledge that some of us may not have as strongly as our ancestors had about what we see in our local areas. So I'm scoring it basically based on kind of a landscape assessment of what I can infer from the applications, and a pond advisor will be going out as well, just to, have a look at the hydrology and the practicality of putting a pond in the landscape. So we have a couple of rounds in the ring, I suppose, before a pond gets dug, but it'll happen quite quickly over the summer.
And then if you are selected, so you're looking for your expressions of interest at the moment, closing date for that is Friday. So you want to get your expressions of interest by then. If you're selected, then you're going to have somebody coming out to check the space to see that you are actually suitable for it. But as you said, there's a step after that then. It's not just a case of you build the pond and you hope for the best. On an annual basis, you hope to be able to run checks and to provide additional funding if the ponds are successful in doing what you hope that they will do.
Yes, well, so there is funding from public sources after this, from corporate sources after I invest the cost of the pond establishment.
Okay.
So in the following 3 years, the landowner they'll have a scorecard to score the pond for the biodiversity that's come in, and that'll be sent with photographic evidence. And over the years, then they'll continue doing scorecards. So from that way alone, they'll learn what they're seeing, and they'll get payments based on the scorecard. So that'll happen over the next 3 years. And I think it's important just to say that the funding that I have and I'm managing comes from the local Biodiversity Action Fund, which is a fund supported and delivered by myself, but the money comes from the National Parks and Wildlife Service.
Okay, and 10, you said, it's going to be granted to 10. To me, that seems like a low enough level, but perhaps not because of what's involved in the actual creation of this. Or is it a case that you're going, okay, we specifically have chosen a small amount to do this with a pilot scheme nearly, see how it goes, and maybe it's something that we'll reinvestigate down the road? Or do you feel like 10 was being generous?
A good question. I think it is a pilot scheme. We want to see how it goes. We weren't lucky enough to get the Hare's Corner. So this is my way of mitigating that. And 25 is the cost of getting the 10 ponds in. It's expensive now to get your contractors and advisors. So there's more than one visit to the pond, if you know what I mean. There'll be someone having a look and see if it's possible, and then there'll be someone actually, digging the ground, as it were. So that's the value of it in the current market.
And when it comes to actually creating the ponds then, I was aware that you were providing the funding, but I had kind of assumed that the landowner would have to go off then and find their own workers, we'll say, to actually create the ponds. But is that all coming part and parcel with the funding? Will they be supplied through yourselves, the people who will actually create it?
Yeah, Reform have someone to advise the landowners on who can actually implement the pond. So they're going to handle that. So this is a new partnership that we're looking to see how it goes and take it further if we can.
And what's involved in the application process, Lisa, for people to get in? Is it kind of a quick enough thing that it's just a preliminary express your interest and then we'll look for more detail after that? Or what type of detail are you looking for in that initial submission this Friday?
Yes, it'll take you about maximum 10 minutes. So we want to know if you have any wetland or indeed if there is a ghost pond on the land. We do not want to be taking water away from existing rivers or water courses because that would disrupt the hydrology of those. So if there's drains or a wet area or an area that you always left to be but you think it might be a bit wet, we're interested in those. We obviously need to know your location. It is important that you are from Laois. And we want to know why people want a pond. What's their value for investing in this type of infrastructure? And I suppose I just wanted to know as well in the expression of interest is what's the wider landscape like? Does it need a pond? Is there woodland around? And that's just to ascertain, what it looks like and the perception of where people are living with, like if it's a built up area or if it's just maybe pasture land versus cropland and that kind of thing, or if it's near, I don't know, a bog or a wetland nearby. All that stuff matters because the water under the ground, it does move around down there. And we would just like to get as much information as we can. We also obviously need to know what size pond people want. So the minimum size pond is 150 square metres and the maximum 600 square metres. And ideally a couple of ponds, but we want to kind of gauge the range of ponds that you need so that, when the advisor goes out on site, that they already have the size kind of in their mind when they're looking across the landscape.
And you specified that it's 10 farms, but you mentioned there about multiple ponds. So could one farm apply to say, okay, I'd like to have 3 ponds and this is my reason why. And if you go out and find, okay, yeah, I think 3 ponds would actually be beneficial here, would you allow that? Would that take up, we'll say, that you've only got 7 left, or does that only classify as one farm?
Yeah, that only classifies as one farm. Ideally, that's what I'd love because you get more biodiversity if you have more ponds.
Yeah.
200 square metres a pond, I'll take in a heartbeat. If it comes that we only have maybe a few people who want very small ponds, we might have another look and see if we can squeeze in another pond there. So it definitely just depends on whether they're ghost ponds or new. The costing would be different. If you've got like strong wetland and you can have a shallow big pond, great. But if it's a ghost pond, then you need to go a bit deep, bit deeper. It just depends on the level of effort, and that you won't know until you go out there and have a look.
Lisa, thank you very much again for speaking with me this evening.
Thank you, Zoe.
And make sure that if that is something of interest to you, that you get your expressions of interest into Laois County Council by Friday, June 26th. And you will find the form linked in the write-up about the initiative listed under the news section on Laois County Council's website. Up next, we are well accustomed to the idea of growing flowers in our gardens for decorative purposes or to have a positive environmental impact. But what about for eating? We'll be looking into that after this.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You are listening to Let's Go Green on Midlands 103 with myself, Zoe Ryan, on hosting duties again tonight. Now, I recall the first time I encountered flowers being served as a garnish on a dish I had ordered in a restaurant, and they happened to be the same type of flowers that I'd been admiring on display at the front of the restaurant before going in. And I just remember thinking, Are they actually the same ones? Now, I don't know if they were, and I don't think so, but joining me now to tell us the proper protocols to follow when incorporating flowers into your dishes is founder of Mullingar Gathers, Emma Noonan, ahead of their Edible Flowers workshop happening in Quagga Studios on Dominic Street in Mullingar next Tuesday, June 30th. Emma, thank you for agreeing to take my call.
Hi Zoe, thanks for having me.
Emma, tell me about the upcoming workshop. What can people expect from the session?
Yes, so we're going to be gathering next Tuesday for a feast of edible flowers and herbs. I'll be bringing along lots of different kinds of flowers that people can eat, and there'll be lots of sampling, and there'll be some recipes that people can take home. There's going to be lots of interactive elements, so people can put stuff together in their own style. We've got like Vietnamese-style summer rolls, and we're going to be decorating shortbread biscuits. It's all just about learning, like, what's on the doorstep. Maybe you can add a couple of extra, like, flowers to your garden. How to think about flowers, like, in a different way, really. And of course, just sitting down eating delicious food, because that's something I'm really passionate about. So yeah, that's kind of the general plan for next week.
And where did the idea to hold such an event come from? Because it seems a little bit outside the box. As I said, it's becoming more commonplace now in your everyday restaurants. It probably has been something that has been in vogue with the more higher end restaurants for a long time. But where did you come up with the idea to say, let's open this up to the masses and tell people how they can be incorporating it into their dishes?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm really passionate about food and about like eating locally and in season. And a friend of mine, Anna Brown, who I think you've had on your show before,
yes,
she's done something like this before in the past, and she kind of gave me inspiration to do it, and lots of knowledge from her as well. But yeah, just there's so much available in the garden and in your like hedgerows and stuff, and it's just a really easy and accessible way to do this. Once you've got a few ideas and a bit of knowledge, it's just a great idea to add a bit of colour and a bit of flair to your dishes.
Give me some examples of edible flowers and what dishes you could use them or incorporate them into.
Yeah, so there's lots of stuff. Now, obviously, it is important. There are some that are not edible and some that are actually quite toxic. So if you are going to pick flowers, just make sure you know what you're picking. But things like violas or pansies, calendula, cornflowers, all of these are things a lot of people have growing in the garden anyway. But they're a really lovely way to add, like, brighten colour. And you can add those just to salads or into drinks. Or you can freeze them into ice cubes and then just add them to your summer drinks. Makes a really, really pretty addition. Earlier in the spring, I actually made a honey substitute using dandelion petals. Really easy to make, and it tastes amazing. And then you've got something called borage, which is really loved by the bees, and it has these really beautiful blue star-shaped flowers, and they kind of have a taste like cucumber.
Nice.
So you can add those. You can add those into salads or into a drink, and you can also cook the leaves from that and use them as a spinach substitute. So. And there's just a few ideas.
Yeah, but talk to me about how this practice is kind of green or a sustainable way of living, because there's probably people listening going, oh yeah, I could probably pick them up in the local supermarket. And of course you are encouraging people that they can seek these flowers out and herbs from local suppliers. But if we think about why you might opt to grow them yourself, why is that more of a green option?
Yeah, so that's the great thing. So everything that's going to be involved in the workshop next week is all stuff that's really easy to grow organically at home, or like forage, like I said, from like the hedgerows. And when you grow them, it's not just about the fact that we can eat them. They're all fantastic for pollinators. So you're increasing the biodiversity in your garden by bringing in the bees and the butterflies and hoverflies and stuff. And so in turn, you're going to bring in more birds, and it's just really important. Like we see the expanding urban landscape, and we're taking away green spaces. It's really important that we kind of provide stuff in our own small like gardens that are really beneficial for the pollinators. And also, when you're doing that, if you are growing your own veg, by having more of these flowers, you're going to bring the pollinators in, and actually you're going to get better harvests for yourself as well. So it's a win-win, really.
So this is the next workshop that you're going to be holding, but Mullingar Gathers, talk to me about the origin story, how it all started and the type of workshops that you typically do run throughout the year.
Yeah, so it started at the end of 2024, so nearly 2 years ago, after myself and Anna Brown and Kim Darby, who used to run the refill mill, we went to a community chili night out in Castle Pollard at the Water Street Association. And we were just there and we were like, this is amazing, but, you know, Mullingar doesn't have this. So we were sort of talking and we just decided, well, you have to make these things happen. So Kim offered up her space and Anna offered up her expertise with like previous events, and we started organising. And then since then I've kind of hosted about a dozen community suppers and lots of different workshops, and swaps as well are a big thing, because I just think it's really important that we share our food, our seeds, our plants. Like everyone kind of has excess when you start doing these things. So it's really lovely to share skills and foods and recipes. And yeah, the whole thing behind Mullingar Gathers really is to bring people together. And food's got a remarkable ability to do that. So that's a big thing. And then I also offer a range of craft workshops, which again, it's just getting people together, taking time to relax. Yeah. And they're often based on kind of upcycling or recycling. So again, it's stuff that's easily accessible. And it's just about taking that time to create and time to spend together. So the kind of end product is a bonus, but really it's just taking the time for yourself.
And how crucial was it for you to secure funding through the Creative Communities Grant? Because, you know, I wonder, would it have been possible for you to put on all of these workshops had you not got those finances at your disposal? Or do you think you would have been able to make it all happen?
No, Mullingar Gathers, it's definitely a passion project. So the funding has been really important. And it's really important to be able to offer such a range of workshops. Over the summer, like there's going to be a whole different range of things, and it's allowing me to bring in other facilitators. So Anna's coming in to teach a workshop on alternative drinks, so like no alcohol drinks and chutneys. And I have Nadia Pickersfield coming to teach a fermented foods workshop.
Fantastic.
So yeah, just without funding, it's difficult to kind of bring other people in, because not everyone's willing to give up their time. So
no, and you don't like to expect people's time. Like, these are experts in their area. You don't expect them to always give up their time. So it's nice when you have the funding to be able to give them a monetary value on their time.
Yeah, exactly.
Emma, thanks a million for chatting with you this evening. It's been a real pleasure, and it sounds like a really good workshop. I hope that it goes well for you. Thanks so much. Yeah, next Tuesday at 7:00. And if people want to book tickets, so there are still a few spaces left. You can check out mullingargathers.com. And as you say, come hungry. And definitely come hungry. Definitely. Brilliant, Emma. Thanks again. Thanks so much, Zoe. Still are planning on needing a tent for any activities over the coming months. You'll want to stay tuned for what's up next.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
It is Let's Go Green on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan in for Aisling O'Rourke. Now, whilst we try to get my next guest on the phone line, we have a little bit of music for you. This is Blue Jean from David Bowie. was the great David Bowie with Blue Jean. Now, recently, Aisling covered the topic of green hushing on the show, where companies deliberately stay quiet about their green practices or sustainability initiatives, usually because they're trying to hide something or avoid scrutiny for not doing more to be greener. But a company doing the exact opposite is French sports goods retailer Decathlon, with their No Tent Left Behind pledge. Joining me now to discuss the initiative is Laura Mason, Social PR and Influencer Lead at Decathlon Ireland. Laura, you're very welcome onto Let's Go Green.
Thanks a million. Thanks for having me. It's a really exciting initiative that we have on.
Now, Laura, that initiative, though, it's been in place over in the UK for some years. This isn't the first year that Decathlon are running it, but it is the first year that they've decided to extend the project out to Ireland. So I'm assuming that the uptake has been good in the UK for them to be rolling it out in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been a massive success already in the UK. And as you mentioned, it is a pilot year for Ireland. So our whole plan is to make camping and festival season easier for our customers. We want to make it the easy choice. No tent should end up in a landfill after just one weekend. So the way everything works will be customers can come in, they can buy selected tents from our store during the summer period, and they can return them by the 6th of December with proof of purchase, and they'll receive 100% of their original purchase back on a gift card. And then these tents will then be resold into Second Life. So it's a win-win for everyone, and you can try out your festival season, try out your camping season, and if it's not for you, you can bring it back into us.
And you mentioned their Second Life. Tell me a little bit more about that. So that's basically literally your second life for these tents.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have had buyback for our bikes and our tents previously, but this particular Second Life will be people can bring tents back in. We will analyse the tents. So let's say if you've used these for your camping season or you've used these for your festival season, you can bring them back in. You will go up to the workshop. Our workshop team will analyse the tent. They'll check there's no massive damage or they're really dirty. They're in reusable condition, and we'll clean them up. We'll patch anything up that needs to be. And then we will pop them in our Second Life section, which is just inside our door, and people can purchase these then at a lower price for a reusable tent. And it keeps everything eco-friendly, environmentally friendly, because that is the main issue. And that is why we brought it into Ireland, because people are becoming increasingly environmentally conscious and they're looking for more sustainable ways to enjoy their festivals. So this ticks off both boxes for everybody.
So what's the catch? It always seems too good to be true. You're getting your tent, you're using it all summer long, you're really getting your money's worth out of it. Then you're able to get the cost of it back as a gift card back in September when you return it in decent condition and you can provide your receipt. So what is it that Decathlon are getting out of it then? Because you're not making money on it per se.
So for us, the main thing is that we want to show people that you can enjoy the outdoors and you can leave no trace, leave nothing left behind. We want you to be able to enjoy your time with your family, with your festivals, but show that you don't need to just throw your tent away, that we can reuse these tents or you can pass them on to family members, because that's one thing that has been a massive disadvantage. People will leave these in the likes of big festivals and they just get thrown to a landfill. So that's what we're trying to do, to show that you can reuse these. So it's more for our customers and our consumers rather than it being for us.
Yeah, and I suppose if there is a catch at all, it's that it's important to note that it's only on specific tents.
There is, yeah. So it is on our main pop-up tents rather than it being our massive pitch tents. But these pop-up tents are the ones that most people will use for their festival season, that most people will use as a convenient pop-up tent. So it is on that. So that it's great to try it and pop in. I would recommend anybody who is unsure or who wants to know more about it to pop into our team. We have so many experts on the floor and they can go through absolutely everything when it comes to what tent people need and what tent is involved in this, and they can go through everything.
And Laura, I suppose for anybody who's listening thinking this is a great idea, as I said, you can buy your tent, get full use of it across the summer, and then once it's in good nick, when you bring it back, you'll be able to avail of that gift voucher, and then the tent's going to be brought onto your Second Life programme and someone else will get the use of it. But if you were to say any tips and tricks maybe for people on how to best care for their tent and make sure that they can bring it back in good working order, what would those be?
So mainly if you're going to a festival or if you're going out with your family camping, it would just be the main things that everybody is actually doing now. So just keep your tent somewhat clean. Don't be kind of pitching your tent where there's going to be loads of twigs, loads of rubbish there where it's going to leave any holes. When you're packing your tent back up, just pack it up nicely where you're not tearing the tent back down. All of our tents are pop-up tents. When you're popping them down, they're very easy to pop down. So there's little clips on the side of them. So just pop them all down nicely. And then just make sure they're somewhat clean. And there's no, once there's no massive rips in it, that would be the main thing for us.
And Emma, remind us again, where can people find out more details on that if they want to reference back this and say, right, she said a lot, let me look back on it and have it here in writing. Where can they find those information kind of written out?
So if you go on to www.decathlon.ie, we'll have all our information on our Tent Pledge scheme there. Or if not, you can pop into any of our stores and ask one of our experts.
Fantastic. Emma, thanks a million for your contributions to tonight's show.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. And that was Emma there from Decathlon. And as she said, they are running that amazing scheme, which is allowing people to get a tent, use it for the entire summer and then bring it back. And it's just playing into that whole circular economy, isn't it? Because every year we see it advertised on the news that festivals, even people camping on campsites, maybe less so there, but definitely with the festivals, that people are leaving these tents behind. And I know last year I would have spoke to the likes of groups that retrieve tents and other camping equipment and they kind of refurbish them themselves and then sell them on to people, because let's face it, sometimes a lot of these camping equipment, be it tents or otherwise, even like little cooking utensils, you know, the little hobs and things like that, they can be quite costly. And if you are, we'll say, a family and you're looking to get a good quality tent to be able to do for, say, adults and children, and for it to be durable, you're looking at the higher end of the market. So I know that those refurbishing type of companies, they're getting the good tents from these festivals, they're patching them up and they're reselling them on for a fraction of the price. So as I say, all these incentives, they're just feeding into that circular economy and us being that little bit more sustainable. That's all for me tonight, but I'll be back at my usual time of 7 to 8 on Thursday evening, bringing you Encore with your weekly dose of arts and entertainment. Up next is Country Roads with Joe Cooney. I see him wandering around the station there getting prepared for that, so he'll be bringing you the best in Irish and American country music up until 10 p.m, and that's coming up after the news at 8. As I said, I will be back in this seat for Aisling again next Monday, but if you can't wait to see me before then, tune in on Thursday to Encore. Thanks a million. See you then.